All right, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board of Trustees to order on Monday, October 2nd. It is 6:31 on my watch. We are holding this in the Village Hall as well as on Zoom. The Zoom link is the agenda, and there's also an audio call-in as well. We have a quorum, and the agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, then, we have public appearances. This is the public's opportunity to speak. With that, we ask if anyone would like to speak, that they share their name, their address, their municipality, and hold their comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of people who would like to speak. With that, we do have wish to speak form completed. This is by Lucas Franklin at 112 Lathrop Street in Madison. And he is on the Zoom, and he wants to speak, right? Yeah, I think. Lucas, we see you on the Zoom. Would you like to speak? Oh.
Double mute.
Double mute, probably. Thank you, David. Still? No, you're...
Still not? No?
No, you're good.
Oh, I'm good. I'm sorry. Okay, hi, my name is Lucas Franklin. I'm the librarian at Granite Ridge School. And I just wanted to speak briefly about a comment that was made at I believe it was the September 20th joint Village Board and Library Board meeting by someone that mentioned that school libraries in Cottage Grove could kind of take place of a public library. And I just wanted to speak on that. Given my background as a previous public librarian, current library and media specialist at Granite Ridge School, library consultant, and spending the last year on the facilities committee for the library board. Just wanted to highlight three kind of main areas on why school libraries can't really replace a public library. The first just being the collection size. A school library is very focused on very specific grade levels. So at Granite Ridge, we're grades 3 through 5, and so our collection just very much is tailored toward that, meeting curricular needs and things like that for students. Whereas a public library is robust and serves birth through age 99 plus with a wide range of resources for everyone. Second is just public libraries are just more than books as well. They're programming, and just kind of looking only at books kind of defeats like what a public library could bring to Cottage Grove, and would be taking away benefits if we only relied on school libraries. And the last thing I just wanted to speak about is just the time period that school libraries are even open. We're only open half of the year, about 180 days to students. And so that is half a year that we see students and that they have access to it. So I just wanted to highlight these three kind of big reasons on why school libraries can't really replace the public library. And I know I emailed you all with a much more detailed list, but I just wanted to kind of share that out today. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas. All right. Any others in the room or on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, just raise your hand. We'll try to call on you. All right, then we'll move on then to discuss and consider our meeting minutes from our regular village board meeting held on September 18th and the special board meeting held on September 20th.
Make a motion to approve both minutes as written.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next then we have unfinished business. This is to discuss and consider ordinance 07-2023 regarding firearms and weapons. There was a discussion during our last meeting in regards to a different part of the section of that particular thing that we wanted to get updated at the same time as the addition that was proposed last time. So Larry, do you have this one? I know Rick was working on it.
I was just looking at election stuff, there's a lot going on there. John, which one would you like me to cover?
This is for the item 6, unfinished business. This is ordinance 072023, amending section 173-1, firearms and weapons.
Right, so this is a change to the penalty if someone discharges a weapon. Obviously, there was an incident that gave rise to this discussion. And it's a relatively simple change. Guess I'd just take any questions.
So the other part, I think, part of the discussion was, in there about concealed carry and some other things that we may needed to have updated as well.
Yeah, so if you look at the ordinance, the section A, there is some language removed, and that is why, just to make it consistent with overall changes of state law over time.
Okay. Any questions from board members? Otherwise, it's discuss and consider.
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance 07-2023, amending section 173-1 for firearms and weapons as edited here on our agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second then. Any further discussion?
So Larry, as I'm reading it, it just says, no person except law enforcement can fire or discharge any weapon, is basically what section A is saying now.
Right.
What did the state statute
So
say anything about that?
this is the removed language that's after that in the ordinance. That's language that is now preempted by state law as it relates to possession of firearms and whether they need to be encased. So.
Okay. I mean, ultimately, as I want to state this and you tell me if I'm reading it right. Basically, A is you can't discharge a firearm or any weapon, really, for that matter, any dangerous weapon. And if you do and you damage something, you got to pay to fix it, and a potential fine of $500. Is that a?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So they only have to pay the $500 if they damage property?
You know, I don't know where this fits into the ordinances, is if there's a discharge, there's a penalty for discharging.
Okay.
Yes, so I guess what I'm saying is I don't know what the penalty is for that discharge, but the penalty if there's damage is prescribed here,
Thank
higher
you.
level.
And there is a penalty for discharge.
Okay, must be a different section.
Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next, sliding down to new business. This was where we get to see some of our consultants. So annual review of village consultants and service providers. First, we have Johnson Block for IT services. I'm going to push the button, so, yeah.
All right, how are we doing? Okay, so Johnson Block, we do all the IT for the village. Pretty brief here today. I'm not gonna keep you too long. We've been busy, but we'll just cover everything we've done and things we're looking to do moving forward. So services we cover, we do all the support for all the employees of the village, essentially. If anything comes up, we take care of it, with a few exceptions being cabling and stuff like that, where we help find the vendors to do those projects. So you can see on here, we do stuff like process, procedure, and I'll be working with Inga on some of that stuff coming up. And all the hardware and servers and infrastructures, stuff we manage on a day-to-day basis. Team is 6. I am the director. We have Jacob Fesky, Josh Wall, Jacob Wyanecki, Ben McRoberts, and Joe Hansen. And a lot of people in here probably talked to all of them, which is good. project review from this year, we have been extremely busy. We replaced, I think, everything that could possibly be replaced. The goal was to get everything up to speed. We were a little bit behind previously. So Cam gave us quite the list, and we replaced all the servers, got everything cut over there. We put in a new phone system, which has been pretty helpful. Networking upgrades, we did new firewalls with redundancy, so we don't have a single point of failure at either location. We did new network switches, we did new wireless access points. So everything pretty much from the building coming in is replaced. We also moved the equipment at the mezzanine at the MSB because it was effectively in the elements. So with the cabling, and we hired a cabling consultant. They moved all the cables. We brought everything back into the police department in the locked door where everything is now secured, which was quite the project, but I think we did pretty well with that. We also did the new body cam system for the police, which was easy work, as Chief will tell you. But we got it done, and things are going pretty well with that. And then we also replaced 16 workstations, getting things back up to place and on a new asset replacement schedule so that we're on a regular schedule instead of trying to do everything at once, which can be kind of a hit to a single year, which we're trying to avoid. Just some numbers from this year. We had 585 tickets submitted by employees. We closed 630 this year. We had some hanging from last year, so we dropped 45, which is good. Our average response time was 3 minutes, which is really good. Resolution was 27 minutes, which is also very good. And then we have a ton of other tickets that we create and monitors and stuff like that that we clear out, which is obviously a lot, but a lot of that is automated, so it's not all me doing it. This is kind of where we spent our time this year, and it makes sense with all the replacements and the infrastructure work we did. It was mostly hardware and software and user support, which is training on the new phone system, training on all sorts of stuff like that. But plenty of work done, a lot of time spent, and it went well. For this year, the rest of it, and coming up next year, there's not a lot left to do. Kind of did everything in 1 year. So we've got some security training, which we do annually, and I think you're all familiar with that. It's a lot of fun. We're doing a password management system, which we'll be training everybody on again. We'll be doing that every year moving forward. We have to replace a couple devices of infrastructure, which is really everything that's left. We'll do an end-of-year service review where we go over all our reports and numbers, which mostly just another couple months onto what I showed you. And then we'll be working on some policy and procedure stuff for employee handbook, onboarding, offboarding type of things, so we have procedures documented and organized so that whenever anything happens, we know exactly what to do. And after that, we're just going to look at some server data cleanup and retention policies, and hopefully it'll be a cakewalk compared to this year. It's a lot of stuff that went on this year, which was good. So that's really it at a base level. I hope I didn't go too fast for you, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions?
I just want to put a comment. At no time does Larry try to sell us things. So what's been really helpful working with Larry is kind of doing an overall risk assessment at where was our current equipment, what does the current equipment budget need to look like, and kind of coming up with a 5 to 10 year plan. So that's by far over the last year has been, I think, the biggest asset Larry and his team has brought, and thank him for all of his work. We don't get billed hourly on our contract, and if we were billed hourly, it would be our billing would be 4 to 5 times what it is. So appreciate Larry and all of his team setting us up for success.
Yeah, you guys won this year.
One question for you, sir.
Sure.
I see security, and I guess I'm thinking about how many times are you helping folks like from getting locked out or password resets? that
Almost
kind of
never. Most of the security tickets are from ThreatLocker, which is a tool we put into Zero Trust.
Yep.
So they try to install something, it's never been seen, it's blocked, they have to contact us. That's the vast majority of those. Some of it is just us investigating stuff and looking at tickets we create and kind of follow down. But as far as that stuff goes, it's going really smooth. That stuff doesn't seem to be an issue here.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Just have a brief comment. We kept you very busy this year. It seems to be a theme with a lot of our consultants these last few years. And we haven't really heard much about the work you're doing, which I think in IT is a good thing, and that means everything went smoothly. So I appreciate all the work behind the scenes to
We're
make
kind
that
of like
happen.
referees.
Yeah.
If they're not talking about us, we're doing okay. Yeah,
So thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Anything else for Larry?
One last thing.
Hmm?
There's a Laserfish implementation coming or working. Are you guys consulting on that or no?
I just found out about it, but I'm happy to help. No, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, right now Johnson Block isn't, we're not to that stage where we would need them to start consulting on it, but
Okay.
soon, maybe.
You have my number.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Larry.
All right, thank you.
Then we'll move to Strand Associates.
Let's see if this works. Hold on. It's just stalling now. Come on. It worked. At least on my end, it worked.
Still delayed up there.
It's delayed. Is it still like that?
It is.
Okay, I'm gonna stop share and try again.
I know.
Yeah, what's going on here?
We have them in the room.
Our IT department isn't working right now, so.
Now it's just frozen. Okay.
Now you got logged out of Zoom.
Where's the IT set here? Okay, I'm gonna try sharing again.
Even better.
Of course. This is all part of the anticipation. Lisa should have it.
It's on the agenda. Guess what? I didn't print it out either.
Yeah.
That's okay. Go.
It won't even, my whole computer's locked up on my side, so. We have pictures on here. You gotta be able to see it. JJ, can you share it from yours on the agenda side? Yeah? As like a PDF, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could share it as a PDF. Okay. We've been the village engineer for 2.5 years now. I feel like I have shared things before and they've worked. Not tonight. So this is our annual review. Josh from Strand Associates, here with me is Kyla. And we want to just talk a little bit about the year. Last year was super busy, kind of like IT. This year was still busy, but maybe not quite as crazy as last year with all the development and everything else that was going on in the community. So let's go to the next slide here. So just a little profile on our firm overall, right? We were established in 1946. We have roughly 500 employees, 12 office, mostly in the Midwest. In our Madison office is our headquarters, so we have 200 people. And that's a lot of engineers that can kind of serve a lot of southern Wisconsin and communities, and brings a lot of experience, and that's kind of why I put that up there. Next slide. Who's our team? Team provides the village with numerous engineering, connections, which was important to us, right? It's not just me, Kyla. There's a handful of individuals that work here and see the staff on kind of a regular basis. That top line is kind of the major ones this year. We have Andy as kind of our wastewater pump guy. Nate's up there as the water specialist. Christine was out here all summer long with construction, doing the parks and the roadway jobs. Tyler was out here the summer before, but then a variety of others underneath, stormwater, electrical, parks, structural, GIS, kind of a big makeup of people. That if Kyler and I are gone, usually one of us are around, but even if they're gone, we want to make sure staff, you know, feel comfortable with reaching out to those people directly and getting information, you know, quickly. There should be one before this. So just wanted to highlight some of the projects this year, and just maybe not as big of a list as last year, but I broke it up into specific regions. You know, we have all the site reviews that are going on. Some of those haven't quite come to fruition, but we're still working on them with staff. Developments overall, those are more like the subdivision kind of developments. Some of those had started last year. We're trying to wrap a lot of those up still. Parks, we have the Wheels Park and Bakken Park, which were big improvements down at Bakken this year, and Kyla will talk a little bit about those. Public Works, Crawford Drive, solar project. Solar project is still there and still needs to be completed. We're waiting on one component for that yet, and it will be ready to rock and roll. And then utilities, we're doing some sanitary flow metering project. That has been completed, and then we're also doing a Ridge Station preliminary design for down on kind of the eastern side to help development there in the future. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Kyla. She can talk a little bit about the projects and some pictures that are associated with those. Can you see this?
I don't need your computer. I can
You don't?
remember from the most part. So our public works projects this year, we had a bunch of them last year. This year, Brian had one project. He was pretty excited just having one project. Crawford Drive. So the before picture, failing pavement, there were a bunch of inlets that were failing, old brick inlet structures that new construction came in and provided new ones, and then even the ADA ramps at the intersection on Crawford. So it was replaced from BB to Oak Street. So it kind of did that connection where we finished off Oak Street last year. You can see the after picture. You've got brand new pavement, new curb and gutter and spot locations, and all new. There were 5 inlets that were replaced throughout the project. Are you sharing now? Oh, and then Sean had 2 large projects this year. One finishing up was the Wheels Park. The before picture's a pretty long before picture. That was even before Crawford, or before Clark and Grove was constructed last year. You just had a big open field, and now we have a beautiful skate park for you, Sean. A beautiful Wheels Park that I drove through that area this afternoon on my way over here, and there's a bunch of people that are using it daily. There was a wonderful grand opening. You guys have got a lot of use, and it's a great asset to the village and for the Parks Department. And then to finish out the Bakken Park improvements, we are working on the Bakken Park improvements currently. That is anticipated to be finished in the middle of November with the shelter. So we're having tennis courts, pickleball courts, brand new parking lot, a connection with the asphalt trail, and green space that will allow for flag football fields and soccer fields. There is a shelter that's being constructed, and that's being anticipated to be completed here for final completion in middle of November. And then the last project that, as Josh mentioned, is kind of up in the air. It's not up in the air. It is, because it's in the sky. On the building. Poor joke. I got to laugh there, though. There is no before picture. It looks like a building top. Now you've got the solar panels on top. As Josh mentioned, we're waiting for one component. It's the AC disconnect, is what our electrical engineer told us today. Typically, that's not something that's on back order, but for some reason, this part is on back order for multiple projects, but as they have gotten their parts that have been delayed on back order, they immediately are installing. The panel that came through a couple weeks ago, which was one of the items that they were waiting for, they came in the next week and installed that. So as soon as this disconnect is in the hands, the contractor will finish up the project, and then everything will be ready to go. And then lastly, we kind of have an overall Public Works and Parks change order record. So it was one thing that we talked about when we became village engineers, is how to put those budgetary numbers together for both design and construction through there. You can see that between the Public Works projects and the Wheels Park and the Park Improvement Project, we're sitting under budget for the bid costs for all of those. It is an estimated construction cost for the Bakken Park Improvements Project because it is not finally substantially complete, but we are at a point where we're estimating tracking under budget. Typically, there's in the industry, it's a 5% change order is kind of industry standard, plus 5% is what most engineers kind of budget overall for a construction project. We're coming in on average for the 2024 projects in total at just under 4% minus. So that's telling you that we're doing the due diligence during the design, during construction, to make sure that things aren't just changing on their own and the contractor just kind of going haywire. So we're out there both in construction and during design to do our due diligence.
Something
wanna add
else-
something?
Yeah, something else good to point out about this is, I mean, like, this was one of the big things when we came in 2.5 years ago and kind of interviewed, was like costs were out of control, right? And this isn't just us, this is staff, you know, like budgeting, we're working hard, design, we're working hard to keep it within the budget, and then even during construction. And even if there's a little, the good thing is we're leaving some flexibility, like, you know, Sean down in the park, some windscreen additions for some of those courts. Well, there's a little bit of room in the budget to add that piece of it, you know, and be able to do those things. And this has been remarkable over the last 2 years as a group that we've done this, just with even the cost of inflation and how it's kind of gotten out of control. So a lot of work, not just from us, but staff, you know, recognizing that this is a priority. And we're trying to extend those dollars and make sure we, you know, spend them wisely. So, do we have any questions for our group, for the engineers?
Guess I'd just add a comment. I get to see a lot of your work first at committees on parks, public works, and plan commission. It used to be utilities, so I know some of the stuff that you're doing, recognized projects, but I don't think I've worked any on that, worked with you on that committee. But I appreciate all the staff time and work that goes into the projects. It really helps things move forward successfully, helps us plan, especially looking at all the capital projects in the future that we've been contemplating, and how important it is for stormwater and planning for our residential neighborhoods and our infrastructure. So thank you for all your work on that. As an extension of our staff, I think we've been working really well together, so thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Strand. Thanks, Kylie. Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
Hardest part was the technology. All right, next we have Baker Tilly Audit Services. You gotta push the.
mic lights up red.
Yeah.
Hit the person.
There we go. Okay, thank you. All right, well, thanks for having me tonight. My name's Amanda Blomberg. I'm a director at Baker Tilly, and we are accounting and audit auditors, and we do the annual audit for the village, as well as some other services, which we'll kind of go through here as well. Here we go. A little bit of background on us. First of all, we have a team dedicated to the public sector, and we serve 4,000 clients in the public sector nationwide from offices across the country. We have specifically 360 employees serving the public sector, and a huge part of those 360 public sector team members are right here in Wisconsin. We have a large team in Madison, we have some in Milwaukee, up in the Eau Claire area, and then we have some across the country as well that we get support from sometimes if needed. Your audit team is mostly Madison-based. Everyone on that team is generally in the Madison office or near Madison, working maybe from home here and there. We do a lot of audit and consulting work right out of the Madison office. Economic development consulting. This is something that's really been taking off lately. We've had a lot of great hires with people with a lot of governmental experience, whether they've been at the state or with other governmental entities for a long time in management positions, and now they're able to come and kind of provide service offerings related to economic development and getting, the right people in the right room to get the decisions made that, you're interested in pursuing. We do a lot of utility consulting. Our energy and utilities team works with a number of local utilities as well as utilities nationwide. And then we have a lot of folks that work in the risk and IT analysis area as well. So if that is something that you're ever interested in. This last year from our audit team, we performed the audit of the financial statements, which includes all of the funds of the utility, or all of the funds of the village and the utilities, so the water and sewer utility. We issue our opinion on those financial statements, and then we also issue a report on internal controls for your review. We present those highlights to the board, which I think we did back in April, something like that. It was very early in the year, so I can barely remember anymore. Accounting is kind of an interesting beast as we hear about all of the projects going on from the engineers and the IT consultant. All of that has an accounting effect. So everything that happens has to get into your financial statements in some way, and those are always changing in the governmental world. So it makes a very interesting year when you have a lot of these projects going on, and sometimes that assistance goes up and down. What I do want to say is that a lot of the services that we have provided in the past, such as accounting assistance, compilations, things that have to be reported to the state on an annual basis, we used to do, and now that's moved to, basically in-house. Your own staff are doing a lot of that work now, which has an effect on, audit fees and accounting assistance fees as well. So we're happy that that's happening as well. Civic Systems supports your Cassell software and some of the modules that you have there that the accounting system is under. That's kind of a subsidiary of the Baker Tilly company. And every so often, as TIFs reach certain points in their lives, we also perform audits as needed there. General advising and consulting as requested. So, hey, we're running into this situation. What do we do, or how should we handle this? And we work through those with your finance staff. And then, as I mentioned, new reporting standards are coming out pretty regularly in the governmental world, and it's not always the easiest. It can be pretty complex from time to time, and so we do develop some tools and templates that we provide to our clients at no additional fee to help either accumulate the information that's needed or kind of work through what are the questions that we need to know in order to get this right in our financial statements. Oops. Just a summary here, the objectives of the audit is really to provide reasonable assurance that those financial statements that are being prepared are materially correct. So the opinion makes that statement, and the unmodified opinion, which is typically what we issue for the village, I don't think we've ever issued anything else, is the highest level of assurance. Internal controls, we take a look at those as part of the audit, and if we do identify any deficiencies that we consider, important enough to share with you, we do provide those in a separate document from the financial statements. Our approximate timeline is listed here. This can kind of change from year to year, just maybe depending on how busy you are with your projects. But generally, we're doing preliminary field work at the end of the calendar year that we're auditing. And then final field work last year was in March, and April, I think we got the audit wrapped up and issued, along with some final deliverables and regulatory reports happening in the May timeframe. And I think we even got a presentation done to the board prior to June this last year. So financial records, we're in really great shape this last 22 audits, so that was a really great you know, we got through with things very quickly, so things moved on a little bit faster time frame than maybe they had in the past. We do have a number of other services that we can provide, just a list here, and you know, as you're looking through here. A few of us on the team here, some of our staff members kind of change from year to year, just kind of depending on the makeup of mix that we have at that time. Vicki Hillenbrand is a partner. I'm the managing director, and Ryan Shavlik has been the senior. All right. Any questions?
Any questions for Amanda?
Amanda, thank you for your presentation and all the additional information on the services you provide. It's our most important responsibility to be transparent to taxpayers, and the audit, you know, verifies all of that. So I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thanks,
All right.
Amanda.
Thank you.
Next, then, we have discuss and consider Resolution 2023-14. This is the White Cane Safety Day, which is each year, it's on the 15th of October. So your resolution is in the packet. I don't know if there's any questions regarding this.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-14, resolution recognizing White Cane Safety Day.
Second.
Motion second, then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. And then we have discuss and consider the building permit application for Russell Wolf for a swimming pool in the rear yard at 310 Southern Grange, lot 130 of South Lane Estates, first edition. We get these time to time, so I don't know who has.
Yeah, I can start us off, John.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, like you said, we normally wouldn't take something like this to the board, but in this particular case with the South Lawn Estates plat, there's a floodplain line shown on the plat and a note that any structure that gets built beyond that line has to have board approval. It doesn't happen very often, but we did have an almost identical case back in 2020. It was actually the property immediately next door. In that case, we did end up giving the board approval for that pool, as long as they stayed above an elevation of 873, and we'd recommend the same in this case. Again, it's right next door in a very similar situation.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Any questions from board members?
I guess I'd just say that I still have the same concerns as I had on the issue previously regarding environmental corridors and sensitive areas and runoff to those areas, and the setbacks were put into place for you know, a reason to protect sensitive environmental areas. And if we get too much built in more sensitive areas, then it's, you know, we keep infringing on that little by little, chip away. So that's, I guess I just wanted to explain why I would oppose this building, as I did in the previous one.
All right. Thanks, Heidi. Any other questions or comments?
I guess, Aaron, I'm struggling to understand here. Like, it's, when I look at the map, I'm looking at the floodplain map, the 100-year floodplain limits. Like, so the pool is going to be built beyond the blue line?
Yeah, partially beyond that line, yeah.
I guess how much of the pool is past, it's mostly past the 100-year flood line? Entirely? Am I reading this correct? I'm on the...
The line on the plat is fairly close to the house.
Okay. I guess, help me understand worst case scenario here. 100-year flood comes through, there's a pool there, I guess guess
The
I'm,
condition would be the pool has to be built at an elevation higher than that floodplain.
Right. Right now, they're proposing.
875, I think is what they.
875 and 8 inches is where they're building the pool, which is nice to have a 2-foot freeboard, 2 feet above that 100-year floodplain, just to make sure that's usually a lowest opening of a home they'd say to be there, but they're putting their pool up above, at least the way they're showing on their elevations now. I mean, as part of your statement is we're asking them to be above that 873. And actually on their site plan, they show all the improvements happening outside of that 873 line, so they need to survey their lot back there and make sure it's accurate, but.
I could jump in on there too, John. So just as a reminder to everyone, Matt and I just agreed, we couldn't believe that it's been 3 years since the last time this came up. But the board directed us to all evaluate whether some of these restrictions on the plats and these relevant plats were enforceable, whether the village had discretion. And I just wanted to remind everyone that what we concluded was that first of all, there is no floodplain, regulatory floodplain in this location. And so the notation on the plat is really an exercise of sort of creating coverage for flooding issues here. And that one of the things that the board wanted done was to evaluate with a little bit more precision, what that floodplain, 100-year floodplain location would be. MSA did that. And then the board used that as a sort of the line you had to avoid. But just so everybody knows, the floodplain ordinance doesn't apply here because there's no FEMA map, as was in Aaron's analysis. So what's being done here, what the precedent, I think that, not that you have to do everything the same for everyone, but in the first instance where we did this, we said, if you want to do this, at least keep them out of the floodplain. Based on the MSA analysis, not based on regulated federal floodplain. And to David's question or point, a 100-year floodplain is just the development standard. We can have and do have storms that are bigger than that. But this, I think, if you decide to do this, and some people may not vote in favor of this, but if you decide to do it, this makes this development consistent with what would be applied elsewhere in the state where the regulatory floodplain is actually developed and administered. So that's the attempt that was made here, is to try to keep this consistent with how we regulate development from a floodplain standpoint.
I guess I just asking a follow-up. Do many places have a 75 or 85-foot setback from floodplains for infiltration and erosion, or
No,
is that a different setback for
yeah, that's the 75-foot setback is in unincorporated areas under shoreline zoning, and that's regardless of whether you're 80 feet above, you're on a cliff face. So that's a different setback. Most, I think, municipalities that we interact with have a 50-foot setback for the same thing. This this is a different measure. We're talking about areas that are by definition expected to be inundated by a 100-year storm. But storms can be higher than that. They can be lower than that. It's just, the whole floodplain regulatory system is based on, you had to kind of pick a storm size. And same with some of our stormwater discussions, and especially when we were north of the interstate. You got to pick a storm size to regulate to, and that's what was chosen under federal law and it's mirrored under state law. As Josh said, the Wisconsin is fairly unique in that it requires development to be at what they call the flood protection elevation, which is 2 feet above what's required for flood insurance purposes. So we as a state really are more restrictive than I think any other state. And to my knowledge, I know of no states that are that restrictive. And then this particular project, or what you would be approving if you do it, applies that same standard. Again, this isn't a regulatory floodplain because FEMA's never mapped this area, but by what was approved in these plats and then a more precise line being drawn and the requirements here, you're talking about 2 feet above the 100-year storm before the water would flow into that pool.
Any other questions?
I I guess, Heidi, help me understand your point then, because, and I'm not asking you to repeat yourself, but I'm trying to catch up here to where you're at.
Sure, so the regulations placed on the plat, where I'm at, I see a lot more behind the scenes in the environmental engineers that review it when it's added into the urban service area. And it's just, things aren't just arbitrarily added in into a plat just because we feel like it should be there. Like environmental engineers review this and designate what should and shouldn't be in, buildable space. So it's, having built surface area, it's not just about protecting the property, we're protecting the undeveloped property also, the waterways and a 100-year storm event is, pretty, they say it's a 100-year storm event, but that's really misleading in what it actually it is. So we're going up to 200-year events. So protecting the, not just the built environment, but we also have to be good stewards of the environment and making sure we have the correct infiltration around waterways and areas.
I guess I'm trying to understand though, and I know you're more well versed than I am, so I'm just baby Huey here, just kind of feeling my way along here. I'm trying to understand if it's at if the pool's at 875 and the floodplain is at 873, that 2 feet, I guess for you that doesn't really make a difference for you. And I guess and why?
Well, we're making an exception to the rule that was placed when the plat was initially approved, which is, even according to older engineering standards, that was what was in place then. So trying to move forward in being more responsible environmentally in built environment, I feel like now we're removing some of the regulations that were in place before to protect that.
In saying that, I just want to read that back, right? So you're saying previously you couldn't build anything in the floodplain, and now
we're still not.
And
Yeah.
if we approve this today, we're making an exception that yes, you can build in the floodplain as long as you're above a certain elevation.
I'll jump in on that.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Make sure I'm understanding this right.
There's a couple different, and Josh, cut me off if I'm going the wrong direction here. First of all, I think it's helpful to talk about one of the differences, and Aaron, I'm gonna need your help on this. The previous project that was approved, there were really two things that you provided exceptions to or approvals for. One was the floodplain line, and the second was a green space designation. Aaron, do you know if this particular location falls into that green space designation like the other one?
Don't believe so, no.
Right. So I think the discussion, there was a two-part discussion for the last applicant. The green space question is not relevant here. And so if you think about, it's easier for me now to be helpful given what I heard you ask and what I heard Heidi say. So the plat was laid out based on a very imperfect line at 874.4. And it was sort of a very coarse set of data was used for that. When you're in a system where you've got a downstream flow, which this is, you can either say, all right, 876 would cover everything and just throw 876 on a map. Or you can get more precise as you move down the riverine system or a flowing system. And you can have 874, 873, 872, or you can have 874 point, and you can have a lot more steps. And what the board had MSA do is to really sort of evaluate this at a 100-year storm level and determine with a little bit more precision where that line would, how those steps would be taken. So you're at that 100-foot level. I'm not sure about this. This is where I need your help, Josh. But I think the 874.4 line on the map isn't accurate. It's not. That's not. You go out there and survey it. That's not 874.4. So it was the fact that was put on the map using, not a survey, and then the notation was put in that the village board had to approve any permits inside of that line. To us at the time, at least indicated that we need to figure out where is that line, and don't regulate based on a line that's wrong, right? And so if you did an 874.4 line, it would look very different than what was on the plat today, and in fact would exclude the areas where this pool is going.
I'm a little different than that.
Good.
So 874.4 is probably pretty close to where it is today. Looking at Dane County LiDAR information where they took survey. It's just when they determined 874.4, they probably looked at the downstream bridge and looked up and said, okay, relatively 874 across all these lots is gonna cover us. What MSA did is they modeled it. So from what appears like when this is attached, right, as one of the attachments, they modeled that entire corridor. They looked at the stream and then they modeled all of it back. And then just like you said, there's steps of it as it goes back. So right in front of that house, really the line, the floodplain line should be 873, not 874.4. It should be 873, which pulls it back down into that lot. They're not actually filling into that floodplain per se there. And what I think, Heidi, you're talking about is what you see in CARPC a lot is you have environmental corridor and you have floodplain. And a lot of times with CARPC, they'll have floodplain, they'll have wetland, and then they'll have some environmental corridor, and it kind of encapsulates all of it. And usually an environmental corridor even goes a little outside those areas as sensitive areas to maybe that floodplain, those wetlands and everything else. And they kind of put an environmental corridor through that. And you're saying protect the environmental corridor, and a lot of times you try to, right, as part of it. There's the setbacks for the wetland at 75, feet and things like that. Environmental corridor is a little bit different and a little bit looser on the term of protection. But what they're saying at this, through the modeling that I can see from MSA, is the line in front of that home or right in those lots is 873. And even when you look at their they have a map that's attached to this that shows really nice landscaping and everything of the pool. They show the pool deck at 875.8. And then as you look past that and down further, you will see the 873 line that comes across there, and everything's out of that floodplain line, that model line at 873. So everything that they're doing is outside of what they are saying is the 873 line. And based on just looking at Dane County contours, that's pretty close, but we're asking them to verify that, right, as they start to build it. Does that make sense,
Yeah,
Larry?
so to clarify, when they do their construction, they're moving the 874.4 line, if you will.
Yes.
Because
Yep.
of fill they're putting in.
Their fill they're
right.
gonna put in and move that around there, but they're not gonna impede within the 873 on that lot. So they're not really getting within the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain level.
And I'm looking at the plans that you're referencing, Josh.
Yep.
Like the pool is within the 874
It
line.
is. It is.
And the very corner of it is actually at 875.
Correct.
Just a little bit of that. So
Yeah.
I guess that's all super helpful. But what I need, I'll go back to my original
Yep,
question.
go back, just so I have.
The original question is, what's the worst that could happen? Like, someone paint a horror scenario for me. If we approve this, the pool's built, there's a 100-year flood. Like, I'm trying to understand environmentally, like what could go, I have a jacuzzi, so I know what would
Per
happen.
modeling, right? Per modeling, if you look at that same plan, really a 100-year flood should come up to that 873 level.
Right.
Right? But as Heidi said, now we're starting to look at 200-year, events. So a 200-year is not double a 100-year.
Right.
People get that a little confused too. Let's say, I don't know what the 100-year, it's the amount of inches within a certain time frame.
Right.
So let's say it's 5 inches within 2 hours, right? Well, a 200-year is probably like 6.5 inches in 2 hours. It's not 10 inches in 2 hours. It's just that much more volume built on top of that. But then maybe, let's say, a 200-year storm comes. Like, we don't know. What if it's a 500-year storm? I mean, worst case scenario is someday it would come up. You might gain a foot or two there. That's why Wisconsin's very restrictive, and they say build 2 feet above that 100-year floodplain. We want to prevent it coming in the lower levels of your buildings or over something like this pool deck. So they're fairly protected to go up that 2 feet from the 873, but none of us can sit here and say that pool may never have water.
Right, I mean, no one has a crystal ball.
Right.
Again, I'm just trying to understand.
What if the bridge gets plugged, right, with a bunch of
Right.
debris, and then
I'm just trying to
builds the way
understand
up?
from Heidi's perspective, like the environmental impacts if we were to approve this, like what could go wrong? So there's a 500-year flood, right?
Yep.
And it comes over the top I mean, 500 is probably over the top of the roof, right, but, of the
Probably,
house, but.
yeah, it probably
but
was
it's
over
like-
the structure at that point
Right,
downstream,
but
right,
I'm
the
just trying to
bridge,
understand, like,
so-
and again, if I'm asking you a question on the line, I'm just trying to understand, like, what environmentally, what are the potential risks here? And I guess I don't understand what the risks are.
Is the concern the watershed? Of just less grass, more concrete, and just like runoff going into the creek? Is that?
Right, and one pool, maybe one pool doesn't make a big difference, but if
She's-
every single
yeah,
house down
right.
there built
You
a
know.
pool in it, then maybe we start to have issues, then you're like changing everything, so.
You're
where do
losing a
we
little
draw
bit of
the
that
line?
green space for water to flow as it,
Right.
if
Okay.
it were to get
Okay.
larger, is where kind of Heidi's coming from, right, Heidi?
Yeah, it's like these one-offs, and then
Mhm.
we approve like one-off,
Just
one-off,
keep
one-off,
adding.
and then pretty soon you have, built all along where now the water doesn't flow as it should or
I guess-
infiltrate as it should.
So then Heidi, like, granted, most of us weren't here to approve the one in 2020, right? But like, and I think Larry was trying to make this point, at least in the maybe in the packet, but like, there's an argument to be made that a precedent was set in 2020, right? And this is just a continuation of that precedent, however unfortunate, like.
Which I voted against in
Right,
2020,
fair.
so, for me, I'm
Fair.
just carrying it forward.
Fair, you and John were the only two here, right? But I mean, I guess it's a dilemma, right? Because again, precedent was always set, but most of us weren't here for that precedent, and,
You always hear me say you never set a precedent. You can do what you want, it's just,
right,
yep, there's no, every one of these decisions is a legislative decision. And like you said, there's different actors. I'll fight very hard against anybody saying that you have to do something because you did it before.
And I do appreciate the discussion very much because we talked about the green space, which is not the same as this, because that was kind of fuzzy on how that was calculated at the time of that plat approval.
One thing to add in terms of the impact while you think about what you want to do, the whole floodplain zoning system is set up to, at a arbitrary number, which is the 100-year storm, to prevent actions taken on land from having, well, impacts on properties on that land, but also to cascade to send those problems downstream. So the standard is you can't raise the elevation in an area for a 100-year storm, and you can't increase basically the intensity of the flow or block the flow. By blocking the flow, create more intensity somewhere else. Those are the underlying goals of the program. There are environmental aspects of that. Certainly, if you have water going where and rinsing out, if you will, places that the water shouldn't be, that's not good. Debris, petroleum, all kinds of things. But it's primarily a sort of water volume and property and transportation and system protection program more than anything. And I guess the fallacy of it all is that if you can build in the floodplain, if you can connect to non-floodplain areas, again, this is not regulatory floodplain, but you can build in regulatory floodplain, but you have to compensate for whatever if you're going to put fill in to do it, you've got your project, you've got to compensate for that. And all of that sort of equals is supposed to equal a zero-sum game when you're in that regulatory floodplain, but it doesn't control anything outside of the regulatory floodplain. It doesn't control anything related to the impacts of a 200-year storm or a 150-year storm. So there's just a regulatory place that was chosen.
Yep.
And the system is intended to have a zero-sum game for that. But all of the impacts all of the development that occurs right on the edge of the floodplain is certainly going to impact how floodwaters adapt to changes in the human-built environment above that 100-year storm. And that's just where we regulate as a society almost.
As I look at it, I agree, Heidi, I'm concerned about the environment too. And as I think about how the decision to make, feels like what we would base a decision on is the statement on the plat, right, of you can build a structure of any kind within the 100-year flood limits elevation, and then they have this 874. And what I'm hearing from Strand and Engineering is that technically for that property, the 100-year floodplain is 873.
Based
And
on,
this,
yep.
based on.
Based on the MSA
science,
modeling, yeah.
Modeling,
Yep,
yes.
yep.
And so this, and the building plans do achieve the 100-year floodplain. So I'm having a hard time why I would say no to it, because it does seem to fit in the rules that were put on the plat. And so that aside, I wonder if there's a separate conversation to have around, in general, structures, and how can we address issues or concerns that might impact the environment outside of this one decision point, but maybe it's a broader policy discussion to have.
Yeah, I would agree. And talking about the rules of this lot and the plat versus the one then in 2020 with the green space that we talked about. I guess my other question is, the topography is being adjusted to make everything above? Like, is this like a retaining wall in the back, that will be modifying the elevation of the land to make sure it's above? Or I guess
Is your
I don't
question, Heidi, is will they build it all up, right? To that
right,
level?
right. Like, there's the ornamental aluminum fence on the outside. Like, is that land being built up to be above?
You know, I'm not sure, Aaron, do we get anything beyond this piece of it, right? No. I mean, it would make sense. They got, you have the concrete there and those kind of lawn chairs and everything else, that if the pool deck is at 7 or 8.75, right? And 8 inches, you would want all that to be flush, right? So you're gonna have to build something up around that backside, probably a retaining wall or something, but I don't know if they actually showed that anywhere.
And maybe it's worth clarifying the condition, but the understanding we had in what we were, as a team, proposing last time was, you don't do any grading inside of 873. Just because the pool's not there doesn't mean you're, landscaping, changing the grade down into 873, because that would be inconsistent with what would occur if this was a regulatory floodplain. I wanted to, one more point. The MSA modeling that was done, if this was a regulatory floodplain and it showed 874 and people thought that wasn't the correct number, you'd have to have a hydrologic study done, hydraulic and hydrologic study, to establish that number, and that's sort of what we did by choice. So even if this was regulatory floodplain and it showed on the FEMA map 874.4, you could do this kind of work, submit it to them and say, here, it's really 873, here's why, we've got more precise modeling rather than just a general number. So the only thing, I didn't want to get lost in the discussion that everything that we're doing in this, as it relates to these things, because it's this odd situation where FEMA doesn't have any regulatory mapping, is all intended to be consistent with what would be the case if it was regulatory floodplain. That doesn't answer the question of what happens with bigger storms, and those are big policy discussions that are being wrestled with on all levels. But everything here is consistent with that.
Just to go back to Sarah, so we don't always have to come back with the weird things. It would be good to address this like on a bigger level, or address the higher storm volumes due to climate change. And I think that's a conversation worth having at board level. Maybe we start at committee or wherever is most appropriate to kind of establish more modern standards.
And it could impact you could have something in the land division ordinance as it relates to plat approval. I would recommend, since we never really wrestled with it in a full deliberate discussion, dealing with the green space, easements that are just named green space easements and don't really provide any direction to the board or to landowners what is or isn't allowed in those areas. We really wrestled with whether the board could approve something in there, and I think figuring out some sort of way to establish some uniformity with respect to that would be a good add to that.
All right, setting that aside, then we do have this request, discuss and consider in front of us.
The discussion today changed my mind on this, actually, so I appreciate it. I'll make a motion to approve the building permit application as described in the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second then. Is there any further discussion?
I just have a question. Are you Russell? Yes. Okay, as a pool person myself, can I just give you some PSAs? Can you make sure there's a lock on your pool fence? And if there's any young children, please go to poolfence.com. They have fences that you can put around your pool to prevent kids from getting in. And please, if you have a back door, put an alarm on it. And have someone in the house learn CPR, please. Thank you. I've saved a child recently, and I don't want to do it again.
Thank you, Brittany. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next, then, we have discuss and consider directing Community Development Authority to meet as needed.
This is coming from some conversations we had at the staff level and then with David as the CDA chairman. The CDA was founded back in 2015 at the time. Their main task was kind of laying the groundwork for the new TIF districts, getting those implemented, getting the plans drafted and approved, and then amended. In the couple of years since then, their focus has kind of drifted a little bit away from the more typical CDA tasks and more into things like marketing and branding and the logos and things like that. And then this year, we haven't met a lot. There hasn't been a lot of agenda items. I think what we've kind of talked about and what we talked about with David is kind of steering them more towards the typical statutory types of projects that they would normally work on. And if they don't have those in the short term, that there's not an expectation that they necessarily have to meet. We didn't want to formally suspend the committee or anything like that, because if we need to get it up and running again for a redevelopment project or something, we don't want to start from scratch. But I think this is more about just setting the expectation that it may not meet as often as it typically has in the past. David, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron and I had a pretty lengthy conversation about either disbanding altogether or just kind of meeting as needed, and I felt strongly it was easier to meet as needed because, again, it's, as we all know, trying to get non-board members to be on committees can be a tooth-pulling exercise, so figured we'd go this route and see what happens.
And this is not unusual. This happens in other places where the CDA is active for a specific project and then gets set aside again until there's something else for them to do. And I think we will have tasks for them in the future with redevelopment projects or amending or creating new TIFs, but right at the moment, there's less of that going on.
I'll make a motion to direct the Community Development Authority to meet as needed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ooh, you guys want to fight over that? No. I don't know which one. You got it? Okay, thanks, Lisa. Everybody's very enthusiastic. That's good. Any other further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, then, we have reports from village boards, commissions, committees. First up, Utility Commission.
We met on Tuesday, September 19th at 5 p.m., which was a different day and a different time, so we almost didn't have a quorum. We had someone show up at 5:06 to save us, so we got lucky there. We talked about the meter at Bryn Mawr Church. They're still trying to find the line. So we'll look forward to next month them telling us they are still trying to find the line again. I talked about write-offs. There was mostly small amounts. Brian said they were paying more for postage than they were trying to get back, so they're going to write those off. There was one large one due to a bankruptcy. There's no vote needed for that. He was just informing us about it. 5B, we talked about a 5-year warranty for the authentic sanitary line. They're arguing it's not a dip, so in lieu of fixing it, they're giving us a 5-year warranty. And they're gonna televise and clean it every year for 5 years. The only thing we wanted to add was to make sure there was a village staff person present when they televise and clean it, just so that we can also make sure it's all good. Engineers report, talked about Shady Grove. There was some changing of the lines due to replanting. Talked about the authentics thing again. West Lawn, it sounds like there's just storm sewer left. Silver Eagles coming along slowly, but coming along nonetheless. And then sorry, I can't read my handwriting, sanitary sewer flow monitoring. I don't remember what we talked about for that.
That was just metering. So we
Metering.
installed some flow monitors over the spring and summer and some strategic manholes around the community where there was some capacity concerns potentially. You may have remembered the farm interceptor that has to kind of get put on to relieve some of those capacity concerns. Good news is there is a decent amount of capacity still left. We were hoping to hit a weather, kind of wet weather too, but as you know, the summer wasn't real favorable for that. So just something to continue to monitor, know that we have capacity and there's an immediate action needed.
And then the Ridge Lift Station engineering report should be completed by the end of the year. And for the director's report, I think as of today, we're fully staffed for the first time this year. So hooray. And then we approve vouchers. And our next meeting is on the 11th at 5, same time. That's it.
Thanks, Chris. Anything for Chris or Josh or Brian? All right. Then we'll move on to Pure Court. David.
Yep, we met September 19th at 5:02. Approved the minutes, and then we got updates from Briar Patch. Briar Patch has lost 2 staff members lately, so they're in hiring mode right now. They did hire 1 candidate internally. Claudia mentioned that mental health issues and home dysfunction has been the recurring theme lately in referrals. A lot more issues to deal with than in the past. They're trying to cultivate connections via family therapy. It's not just a Cottage Grove issue, it's across Dane County and the entire service area. On top of that, the new CEO is implementing new changes across the organization. So lots going on at Briar Patch as an organization. Claudia and JJ had made several attempts to connect, but dates just haven't seemed to work out. So hopefully those two will have a chance to touch base about the website by the next meeting. Next meeting will be Monday, November 20th at 5 p.m. And we closed the meeting at 5:12, so it lasted 10 minutes.
All right. Thanks, David. Any questions for David? All right, then we'll move to Parks, Rec, and Forestry Sustainability. No, that's another one. Sorry.
Yep, we got another 3-topic committee, but not today. So Parks and Rec, we met on the 21st. And we talked about the dogs in village parks as we discussed a couple meetings ago. And the committee members agreed that we should move forward with an ordinance change. Basically the same to stay off sports fields and playgrounds and in shelters. So the committee would like to see the final draft of that before sending it up here. So we discussed that and that'll keep moving forward. So we'll expect to see that back here. We also went over the 2024 budget, which we'll see soon through Budget Review Committee and then our workshop. We talked about a grand opening of the courts at Bakken Park because things are getting pretty close there. It looked like there were some electrical lines coming up out of the ground, so should have some light so people can play. But the committee decided that since it's so late in the season and we're not sure when all the electrical will be installed, to just do the like kind of a celebration next year in the spring, kick off the new facilities there. Other project that's basically the only thing we have left open, the Wheels Park going strong, so. I think that's all we talked about, unless I missed something, Sean?
Nope, that's
Okay,
it.
all right. Unless there's any questions.
So the discuss and consider is,
Oh, yep, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
The discuss and consider, the other thing we talked about, which didn't mention here, the alcoholic beverages in village parks, that's for shelter reservations and to streamline kind of that whole decision process instead of, it's just making it easier through the permit process on staff and like streamline the application process. Is that,
This is
am I
more of a
capturing that
Lisa-
right?
This is more of a
Yeah.
Lisa thing.
So it's kind of two things. It clears up what past practice was with picnic, what they called picnic license, which is really a temporary alcohol license that can only be issued to a bona fide club. So this is just having the applicant, if they're reserving a shelter or say Flynn Hall, if they're gonna have alcohol, that they are notifying us, so then we can notify the PD that this is happening, and it will be a fee, not a license. So that's two factors.
Is there any prohibition on glass beverages or anything like that? Out of curiosity, anybody?
No,
There's no glass allowed into the splash pad area. That's on the sign of the splash
correct.
pad.
And when we do things for Music in the Grove, we ask for no glass.
What's the actual objective to prohibit alcohol possession or consumption in a park? Is it to gain fees? I mean, can I not go to a park and watch a pickleball game and drink a beer? Is that true, that I can't do that?
That is true.
that's true.
And what's the objective of that, of not being able to consume? I guess I just don't understand it. Is it litter? I mean, what's the, and I'm not like a huge party guy, so I'm not asking so I can go get drunk in a park. I'm just trying to figure out why this is even an ordinance.
So historically, from a law enforcement perspective, you're looking at the regulation to control behavior and the distribution to unauthorized personnel. So again, while you may be a responsible adult and you only bring for yourself and you only bring one alcoholic beverages, that doesn't mean that the person sitting next to you doesn't bring a 24-pack and then start selling them to a 16-year-old for $2 a can. And I
Isn't
say
that already illegal, though? I mean,
while it's illegal, again, this is to facilitate closing that loophole, that avenue at an open public place.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance 082023 regarding alcohol beverages in the village parks document as updated in our packet.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second then. Any further discussion?
You said it was changing to a fee? Or,
Right, so it would change it, the way that statutes are written, anybody getting a picnic or temporary license, it's a $10 fee. So we saw that when they did the Taste of Cottage Grove, and the Lions Club brought that forward. This is a fee associated with the park rental or Flynn Hall, so, yes, it's a
So-
fee not associated with a license.
so I can't take a beer and go down and watch pickleball unless I pay $10 and tell the cops a week in advance.
Larry?
Reserve a shelter.
So I think the questions have gone into a direction that's, that a good broader discussion that you might want to have about what is or isn't allowed. The only purpose of this ordinance, so nobody's creating new process. The only purpose of this ordinance was to recognize that it wasn't appropriate to make someone apply for what we call a picnic license. That's only for when you're going to sell alcohol. And so we'll still do those for certain fundraisers and things like that. This was just a recognition that we're not supposed to be selling sales permits to people who just want to rent a shelter and have a graduation party, right? So there is a broader discussion you can have, and there's certainly communities that allow and don't allow alcohol in parks. But we were just doing it wrong before, and this would make it so that we're doing it right, and it's a little easier. It's a lot easier to get your $10 pay your fee to have a party under this ordinance than it is. If you're pro that, it's moving it in the right direction. Getting a license from, through a statutory license isn't necessary. That's all this is doing.
Can I just say that back in a way that I can understand it? Is that if I want to rent a shelter for a picnic and I want to drink, this makes it so I don't have to get 2 permits. I can just do it all at once, kind of thing.
So that's where the confusion is you wouldn't be getting a license. So this is just paying a fee for having that alcohol at a shelter, because there's more things that go along with it for park people, potentially. So it's not getting a license, if you will, what they call a picnic license or a temporary license.
I
Yes.
still don't understand the objective.
Well, the objective of what's in front of you today is to yes, what you just said. So you don't have to get a sales license and go through all that process as it is under the current code, which is incorrect. The objective is to keep things the same way they are, only do it right, and it would be easier for those people that apply for it, and you wouldn't have to get 2 licenses. There's a broader conversation in terms of the objective of why you prohibit it altogether, which you can certainly have that conversation.
Okay.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second then. Is there any other discussion? All right, having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Heidi, anything else?
Nope, that's all.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Next then we have Deer Grove EMS. We have a couple discuss and considers here, but I will save them till the end. I'll run through the meeting. Brittany, you can chime in, or Chief, if Chief's still here.
No, I think he left.
Oh, maybe get called up. He said he was going to stick around, but. All right, so we had our meeting on September 21st. He went through the usual agenda items that we do regarding the financials and expenses and write-offs, et cetera. There were no write-offs. Staff report from Chief, correspondence, and then jumped into the intergovernmental agreement, excuse me. And there was the considerations we were proposing to the other municipalities for the commission to discuss several items which this board is familiar with. That was taken well, and I emailed those out following that, and we'll move forward with working on those as a commission in future meetings, potentially impacting either the agreement or maybe it's a practice or policy, depending on what the commission decides. Next, then, there was it's been on there for a while, discussion about adding 2 full-time employees for 2023 with this unassigned fund balance. That's it's continued to be tabled. The chief indicated there's not enough time really to add the staff in 23. So really they're looking for, as originally was planned, beginning of 24, which is also in the budget that was discussed. Use of unassigned fund balance is one of the items that this board would want to have the commission discuss. There was a little bit of discussion about LifeQuest billing base rates, slight adjustment there, but more also that LifeQuest has been acquired and the new organization has some other bells and whistles with it, which will be helpful for the district itself in collection of data and things of that nature. So that's going to be very nice to see in the future. The budget, Cameron was there, provided some nice input along with Chief. Overall, proposed budget, which will be discussed later by the Budget Committee and the workshop, as Heidi referenced before, as well as this board. As proposed right now for the village, it would be a 14.75% increase over prior year. That does include the ambulance, as we talked about, as well as 2 staff members and some other things that are in there overall for the district. So more to come on that. Then covered in closed session, the agreements with the towns of Deerfield and Pleasant Springs. Their contracts, this is to provide service to them. Those are before us this evening for discuss and consider. Although it's, personally, I wanted to see these increase a little bit faster and ultimately get in line with all the other municipalities that are in the district, but certainly makes a nice step forward towards that. And again, that's one of those items for a discussion for the agreement with the other municipalities going forward. So that'll be before the commission coming up. So there is the 2 agreements. Again, they're 5-year agreements. Provide service through the town of Deerfield and portion of the town of Pleasant Springs. That portion of Pleasant Springs also gets support or service from our fire departments, the joint fire department. So they're also, I think, coming to agreement with that, I believe, as well. But that's what's before you. The commission approved these, and looking forward to further discussion on, again, agreements in the future. Any questions?
Make a motion to approve the Deer Grove EMS District and the Town of Deerfield EMS agreement as written.
All right, thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
You're back.
Aye.
I wasn't here the whole time. What are we talking about?
He snuck in at the end.
John will make a second motion. I'll make a motion to approve the Deer Grove EMS District and the Town of Pleasant Springs EMS agreement as written.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Any questions from you regarding any of the other Deer Grove EMS stuff? Okay.
I guess I just want to make one quick comment. I know 14.75% sounds like a lot. That number started at 25%. So I really appreciate Chief Lang and his efforts in communication with me on how could we make that, while adding 2 staff, while adding the ambulance, palatable for all municipalities. So they're, kind of happy compromise there.
All right. Thanks, Cameron. All right. With that, then, Chief, you got something?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for approving the 2 contracts. Through discussion with them, it was important to get them to understand the true cost of providing the service to them. They saw the first number that we provided and basically double what their contract was, and it was a little bit of a shock to them, but they also didn't quite understand that our costs as well had doubled. So even though their number doubled, it still didn't represent the true cost of EMS provision of services to their township. So that this contract kind of greases the wheels for the next contract where through discussion, there'll be additional things added like planning for depreciation, having them understand the true impact of the shared revenue provisions of the most recent state budget. So these are all things that one kind of leads into the next. So when we come back to have this discussion in 5 years again, an increase won't be of a surprise to them because they'll still be receiving fantastic service and know that they're getting what they're paying for effectively, and what they're paying for is the true value of the service they're receiving.
Thanks, Chief. All right, next then, Cottage Grove Fire District Commission. David?
Yep, we met September 25th at 6:30 at Town Hall. We approved the minutes with a few changes. Chief gave his report, sitting at 46 members currently, roughly about 244 calls in the year with 2 exposures. There was a house burn that prior weekend. There were a few issues with traffic, but nothing of real note. Somebody drove by and complained about the smoke. I thought that was funny. They also worked with Hydrate to learn about rail car safety. Pleasant Springs did approve the joint contract at their last meeting. We will approve that contract, or we'll discuss and consider that at the next village board meeting. Moving on, we talked about the security system upgrades. The town did approve funding for those. I said that we're still in the process of approving FY24's budgets. So we actually tabled that agenda item. We'll probably talk about it at the next meeting, which will be the end of October, or towards the end of October. We may in fact table it there as well. So more to come there as the village works through its budgeting process. We then we had to do some accounting changes to leverage the ESB fund to pay for some repairs that were made. So we had to basically move funds from the ESB fund to the property repair fund to balance the property repair fund. Chief Archibald discussed his FY24 budget. I screwed that up in my minutes. So we actually approved his operating and his capital budgets as written. And that carried 6-0. Let's see here. We also approved the emergency services building budget as well. Next meeting is October 23rd at 6:30. Then we adjourned at 7:02.
Any questions for David? Thank you, David. Next then we have Law Enforcement Committee. We met on September 26th. Covered the usual items. First, though, we had an unfinished business item regarding LED stop signs at the corner of Cottage Grove Road, West Oak, and Southern Grange. Those should be in mid-October. And again, those are ones in the center. They'll be installed so they're aligned with the line too as well, so that those actual poles will move. Staff will do that. So we're able to get that sorted out. Hopefully that will prevent a few people from running right through that intersection, which is what the complaints we had regarding that. Went through, Chief covered the hiring process, working through that. Again, this is for some backfill for 2 spots. Currently at that point, he had 5 applicants, or they had 5 applicants. So we're looking towards that to fill 2 spots, so hopefully we'll have more. Updated us on the canine program. Officer Ace is going to be the new canine officer, and we'll be going through some additional training with Nash and in the upcoming, in this fall period. Then covered a little bit about the 2024 proposed budget. Again, that we'll all see coming forward through various committees and everything. Went through the calls for service, the normal reports the chief does. Nothing really of note there. And we have the drug take back on October 28th at the police station. So that'll be happening. So, and then to give an update on the drop box, sorry, I missed that. The drug drop box, the vendor that produced those has stopped producing them. So Lieutenant and Chief are digging around trying to find other providers for that. We do have, the grant money though to make that happen. So, anything else, Sarah or
John?
Chris? Yes.
Just out of curiosity, I'm looking at the agenda or the packet for law enforcement, and there's these pictures of like roadblocks.
Oh yeah, that was part of the discussion for the budget. Those
okay.
are specially designed to prevent people from running through your typical barricade. So Chief has in the budget a set of those. And what we're going to do upcoming at the Christmas in Grove, the vendor is going to actually display those for the police department and our community at the 2 intersections needed. One down by the emergency services building and one up here at the corner there. So
Cool.
At least the committee said that we thought that was worth the investment. So, but again, that'll be part of the budget for the law enforcement. Sorry, I missed that. Chief, you're going to tell me that too. I missed that, weren't you? Yeah. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Anything else? Chief, anything else? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to Nadvik landfill. David, again.
Yep. Met the day after landfill, met on Tuesday the 26th at 6 o'clock. Approved the minutes. We paid the bills. No new changes in the last testing and monitoring results. Tina from Strand came by, gave her annual update. Good news is nothing major of anything to really note. Business as usual, which is always a good thing in an old landfill. She then covered the new 2024 agreement. Fees are the same. Everything else is unchanged year over year. They just changed the dates on the contract. So even the amount's the same. So it's $26,500 on the year for landfill monitoring. We made a motion for the budget, made a motion to approve the agreement, and then we made a motion to approve the budget to match 2023's budget. Both carried 4-0. Next meeting is Monday, November 27th at 6 p.m.
Any questions there? All right, thanks, David. Then we'll move to communication miscellaneous business. Down there, first up is consideration of the vouchers.
Make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Is there a second? Thank you. Fast. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, the board did receive from CI Pediatric Therapy a endorsement for the library. So that's there. Everybody's got it in their email box to take a look at. Next, then we have upcoming community events.
Dolphin Swim Academy is hosting a trunk or treat on October 27th. All the local business, well, no, I shouldn't say all. A lot of the local businesses are coming out, and it's a free event. It's on Friday the 27th from 4:30 to 6:30. So everyone dressed in their Halloween best.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. We'll mention it again, trick-or-treaters too, obviously. That's, I think, 4:30 to 7 usually? Yeah, on Halloween. So again, everybody watch out when you're driving around that night, please. Like every night. Anything else for community events? I did mention the drug take back on the 28th. Chief, I don't know, you want to cover any more of that?
Yes, you did. Drug take back. We'll have setup drop-off at the MSP building, depending on weather. It'll either be right in the parking lot or we'll create a drive-through configuration. Any unused prescription medication can just be turned in, and we'll make sure it gets properly disposed of. Again, October 28th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
All right, thanks, Chief. Future agenda items? Matt, anything you want to, plan commission?
I might be on family medical leave, so we'll see if if we have a newborn by then for me, but I can't think of any agenda items.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Then we'll go to reports from village officers. Larry, anything else? No, okay. Cameron has a few things as well as Inga, so you guys want to?
Yeah, I just have a couple quick things, and then I'll pass it over to our new HR manager, Inga. So on the item, you'll see kind of a insurance provider review process as the agenda item, and really this was born kind of out of our due diligence process. Whenever I see significant increases in prices, we kind of, and it's been 10 plus years since we've evaluated those services, we take a step back and kind of be like, okay, well, what other alternatives are there out there? So one of and where Inga came from was realizing that there really are only two major carriers in Wisconsin that offer the level of insurance that the village requires. Our current provider, the League of Municipalities, while we don't have any current concerns, there's certainly other things that are out there as far as coverage and services that they provide. So what we're hoping, or I guess what I'm wanting to get feedback from the board tonight, is this is a situation where we wouldn't typically go through a full-blown request for proposal process due to there only being two really providers, or we kind of call these sole source providers in a sense. So right now we're getting information from the other insurance provider, not our current. And we're hoping, we would bring back some of that information side by side for discussion on October 16th. But we're just wanting to make sure that this board was okay with that process, or if this board would be looking to go for a formal RFP, which we typically haven't done for these type of services.
You said there's two?
Yep, the League of Municipalities Insurance, and then CIVMIC. CIVMIC is, you could probably speak to it more.
Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company. When you look at different insurance companies throughout the state, these two are really the top for municipalities in terms of level of coverages and then services that they also offer to municipalities as well.
So I guess the question is that are those regional players, or are there national carriers that we should be looking at, or is that it? Like literally, there's two in the entire country for all of the villages, cities, and
because insurance is so specialized in Wisconsin and certain debt covenants and things that we have to maintain. Those are two really not even regional but Wisconsin-based companies that offer this insurance. What we've found, or what other municipalities have found with the national carriers, is not receiving the level of service that we need. We have a plow truck that gets taken out. Instead of receiving reimbursement or damages for that in 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, we're not receiving reimbursement things for like a year or 6 months. So a lot longer lead times there. So this is definitely something I would have strong reservations about asking a national carrier to provide coverage. Another reason why is both of these companies provide kind of what ancillary services. So, one might provide like public safety training to, Wisconsin, our public works department at quote unquote no cost. Obviously it's built into the premiums and such. So we wouldn't necessarily receive that quote unquote level of service from a national carrier as well.
Cameron, is it like when we have personal insurance where maybe if you change your deductible amount, your price goes down, or is there anything like that it would make sense to work with our current insurance agent to also get a quote, or let them know we're looking at quotes?
Yeah, so I have let the league know that we are looking into it. There are different levels of coverage, and truthfully, the league does a different, where they cover a lot of first dollar claims, whereas CIVMIC is more of above a certain deductible limit. Now, pros and cons to both. So really, in between now and the meeting on the 16th, we'll collect that information and kind of summarize to present to this board to make kind of a quote unquote decision. I think what we'll find is we're gonna have very similar insurance plans, and what we're gonna be looking at is what are some of the extra services that both provide on top of what the standard insurance is. Because obviously Inga is a one one-man quote-unquote department through an administration. A big need for us right now is internal training. So whether it be, not that we have an issue with it at all, but like anti-harassment training, safety training. A lot of these companies offer safety grants that we can apply for and get reimbursement for and give that back into our system. Both obviously offer different types. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what some of the things that you've seen through CIVMIC that they offer.
I mean, I think you've hit on it, is that training component. What's nice about CIVMIC is that they have a dedicated safety specialist and EPL specialist, employment practices liability, that will assist the village in identifying training needs and then customizing trainings that will fit the village and the different policies that we have in place here.
I guess I would just be interested, and I know you don't recommend a national carrier, but to see if there is a material difference in the cost between picking from two and picking from, not suggesting we move, just understand what we're signing up for.
Sure. We can add that to our evaluation. If we do that, it might be a little bit longer than October 16th, so it might be the first meeting in November. So just, as we get information, we'll keep this board updated.
Cameron, were you trying to do this ahead of open enrollment?
So open enrollment's actually happening right now. So open enrollment ends October 25th. So this is not for our health insurance. This is for, property insurance, cyber insurance, workers' comp. Believe it or not, we have one of the lowest worker comp rates and that wouldn't change our what is it called? Our mod is 77%, which speaks to our staff being safe. So we're not having we haven't had a history of a large amount of missing work claims, which helps.
I guess I don't know, maybe I'm alone here, but I thought we were talking about health insurance. So I mean, this is really specialized insurance that we're looking at here. This is, which would, this whole conversation changes for me now, because in what I'm hearing, because again, you're not looking at this from a health insurance. You're looking, and that explains why there's only two carriers here to pick from.
And furthermore, I'm not aware of any municipality in the state, at least not any that's 5,000 population or above, that doesn't use one of these two carriers.
So really, you shift towards, if you're not using one of these two carriers, you're talking about being self-insured, which I would not recommend for a very long time.
So hearing this, I guess, Vince, going back to you, does that, right?
Oh, okay.
If there's not a national carrier, there's not national.
Right. Because I mean,
I knew what he was talking about.
Okay.
I didn't think he was talking about health insurance, but I guess it seems like there's not very much competition if there's only two people. It just seems strange.
Well, we live in Wisconsin, so
And I think there's weird things when it comes to property. So both of these insurance carriers, for example, from the property perspective, offer assessment service. So basically, every couple of years they'll do assessment of our property insurance. Whereas if we were at a bigger, for ourselves or a bigger carrier, they would more likely than not say that you're on the hook for that. But I'll still do the digging. I don't think it's.
I lived in Hudson, Wisconsin, for instance. Are you telling me 1 mile across the river, I wouldn't like a similar climate with snowplows and that kind of stuff? There wouldn't be other competition in those areas?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of background, so the story of CIVMIC, because I'm most familiar with that one, is back in, I think it was the 1980s, there was an issue with municipalities getting general liability insurance. So a group of, 10 to 20 municipalities came together and formed this company so they could insure themselves for general liability. So that's kind of the story of how that company has evolved over time, and now they're at, I think, 54 members. So
co-op? It's a self-insured co-op?
it's an organization, it's a member-owned organization.
Mutual.
So just to give you that background of that, general liability insurance has been an issue over the years for municipalities to get. So that's potentially why there are limited opportunities for companies in Wisconsin. Does that?
And I think the league insurance is not, there's no profit there either. I mean, the competition would be to try to tighten your belt, but I don't think there's any.
That was my next question there. It was like, what I'm hearing, there's little to no margin in any of this stuff, and hence why there's only two. Because I mean, again, you're insuring municipalities for snowplows and general liability. It's just not, by and large, from a property and casualty perspective, there's no money in it. So this all helps me, right, to understand why there's not a breadth of people to talk to about this stuff. So.
Doesn't matter who our other municipalities that we have joint services use, or do they, like, for a fire engine, would they, like, our insurance pay us whatever portion that we own of that vehicle? And
Yeah, fire is a unique where we are covered. Each municipality is expected to have insurance, and you're supposed to insure your value of so a $2 million truck, and we have 50% of that truck. We need to be insuring 50% of the value. And then let's just say the town has to be insuring. So interesting when you actually have to file a claim for that. It does not impact though, like EMS or anything. They have their own service provider for that.
okay, thank you.
I will say there's a big public safety. So, Chief has worked with the league before. So there's a lot of diving into what are the individual service each carrier has and the pros and cons. So we really want to bring forward a comprehensive list of the pros and cons for both of them. Kind of like I said, one of the first big financial differences, the Civic, you're incurring a little bit of the original risk, but in the end, you may end up being, about the same. So it just depends.
All right. Moving on to the personnel.
And
Yeah.
first, I'll just, welcome to Inga. Who,
Yeah.
Is her first, she's started about a month ago, but it's the first opportunity we've had her, have her here in person for a board meeting. Inga held essentially the equivalent role to what JJ does for us here, but in Milton, in Rock County. And she was the director of administrative services there, working directly with human resources, communications, and special projects. So she's joining our administration team here with the main role being human resources, but she will be helping JJ and I with communications and special projects as well. So, with that, we threw right into a big update that was much needed for personnel manual, and that's moving along. And Inga can kind of share that.
Yes, so one of the big major projects that I've been working on in the first couple weeks with JJ and Matt, and then Cameron as well, is the update to the personnel manual. My understanding is that this is the first update that's happened to it since 2013, so it's well overdue. And during this process, the staff has identified 3 goals as we're working through it. We're reviewing policies and procedures to ensure that they align with current laws and best practices. We're also reviewing the policies and procedures to better position the village for recruitment and retention, while also being mindful of any tax levy constraints that are in place as well. And finally, we're working to create more formalized processes related to the human resources functions to make them more efficient and transparent. So ultimately, as we're moving forward with this project, the personnel manual will be treated more like a living document with regular updates and reviews taking place moving forward to keep it as fresh as possible. So with that, we are planning to have a draft of the personnel manual for the village board to consider at the October 16th meeting.
All right. Thank you, Inga. Any questions for Inga?
Looks like you hit the ground running, Inga. Welcome.
Thank you.
One kind of quick comment on the personnel policy. there's gonna be several changes in there. All of the changes that we're proposing are likely gonna have a net positive budgetary impact, so we may be improving certain benefits, but we're also not taking away, but adjusting our current practices to allow, room for that, so.
All right. Thanks, Cameron. Anything else there? Then we'll move right to next item. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I'd like to make a motion that the village board goes into closed session in regards to the annual village administrator's performance evaluation and contract for services. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter the closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C, concerning the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibilities. So that.
I will make a motion to modify the administrator's severance clause from 6 to 12 months. Add a 3% merit increase to salary and 6% bonus.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn, non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.